As a quick recap on part 1 of this video series, entitled Around Jura via Loch Sween and Eilean Mor MacCormick, I left Loch on a lovely sunny morning at the beginning of September and made my way down the Sound of Jura to land in Eilean Mor MacCormick and moor up for the night. Conditions in the way were mixed with blustery winds and some rain, but I slept like a log on an inflatable cabin cruiser and awoke till another lovely morning. My plan for the day was very flexible and would be driven by sea conditions, as I was aware the winds were still forecast for strong gusts, and both the Sound of Jura and Sound of Islay are very tidal. But first I was going to head from Eilean Mor and explore lovely Loch Sween. At the northern end of the loch is an outstanding sheltered and scenic area called the Fairy Isles, and it had been a year or two since I had last visited. After that I intended retracing my wake, passing Eilean Mor and cross the Sound of Jura, passing Skervule Lighthouse on the way to Craighouse Bay, where I would stop for lunch, then head up the Sound of Islay, on the western side of Jura to moor up in Loch Tarbert for the night. If all went to plan, I was doing around 55 miles. If sea conditions proved too rough, I would hopefully find a shelter spot around Craighouse Bay, then continue when conditions allowed. For me, that is the secret of successful multi-day adventures. Being flexible. Working to tight timescales can be disastrous. Sometimes I have to wait a day or three to ride out bad weather. But I'm lucky to be retired, so no pressures on having to return on a certain day. I'm an early riser, so as soon as the sun was above the horizon, I awoke and poked my head out the boat tent and saw all was well in my world. The previous night, while walking, I passed some bramble bushes, so I went a short walk to waken myself and collect some. I enjoy a breakfast of fruit and fibre cereal, and the fresh brambles made it extra fruity. That was after I'd checked there was no extra protein on the berries in the form of little worms. And I must say it was a delicious breakfast. I washed it down with a mug of hot coffee, stored everything away, and then cast off and headed out the sheltered bay, towards Loch Sween. Without the strong wind tormenting the tide race, I didn't even notice it being there. Passing Donny Island at the entrance to Loch Sween, I was just too late getting the camera out to capture 2 deer in full antler lock. It was the first signs of the rutting season starting, where male deer start getting very territorial. This one was the winner, and watched his rival slink off with its stub tail between its legs. I zoomed into the hills at the end of the loch, the highest on the horizon being Ben Cruachan, near where I started in Loch Etive. The further up the loch I went, the more the wind dropped until the sea surface went mirror smooth, and the trees reflected their upside down side perfectly. Initially I'd planned to head straight for the Fairy Isles, but now decided to call into Taigh so the drone could have a look at the village reflected in these perfect conditions. Taigh has a small slipway and pontoon next to a general store, but as I didn't require anything, I headed to the northern end of the bay, well out of everyone's way, and let the drone loose. And when the drone was done, I clambered back in the boat and started heading for the Fairy Isles. They're just round the corner from Taigh. I loved the eyebrows on this old bird, and I'm not sure if it was a fashion statement or whether all older herons have them. A handful of seals guard the entrance to the inner basins. Although they eyed me suspiciously, I guess they didn't consider me as a threat as they kept in their perch. This one looked positively bored with me shoving a camera in its face. The water was pretty shallow, so I took my time heading as far as I could go into the mud-bottom basins. Then, when I ran out of water, I let the drone continue the journey, until it too ran out of mud. I then retraced my wake back to the Sound of Jura, passing Loch Sween Castle on the way. It's believed to be the oldest standing castle in Scotland, built around 1100s, when Argyll was owned by the King of Norway and not the King of Scotland, thus a Viking construction. It was in 1266 that Argyll and the Isles were transferred to Scotland by King Magnus of Norway. It was then full steam ahead, crossing the Sound of Jura, passing Eilean Mor MacCormick and Skerville Lighthouse on the way to Craighouse Bay. The Sound was calm and made an easy crossing, so I landed at Infernal in good time for lunch. It's a lovely sheltered sandy beach to the north end of Craighouse Bay. And as I scoffed my lunch, I let the drone have a look around. I enjoyed my time sitting in the sun, slowly digesting my lunch and waiting for the tide to turn. Because the sea was relatively calm, I was wanting the tide to start its flood up the Sound of Islay, for no other reason than to save fuel from fighting against it. I was happy enough the hills of Jura would shelter the Sound from the north-east wind should it start to get up. Exactly in low tide I continued on my way, past Craighouse Bay and round the southern tip of Jura. Unfortunately, I miscalculated the wind, and it did start to rise. It now came whistling straight down the Sound against the flooding tide, turning it into a sea of whitecaps. I headed close into the Islay shore, hoping it would be a bit calmer. I was surprised to see, on the other side of the Sound, 2 kayaks paddling close to the Jura shore. I hoped they knew what they were doing, as conditions were quite rough. Unknown to me at the time, they did know what they were doing. By sheer coincidence, it was my brother and his friend. We met up the following day, and he mentioned the Port Askig lifeboat had been out just before I passed. It went to assist a yacht that started to struggle in the middle of the Sound. I did notice the lifeboat crew tying up the lifeboat as I passed, but missed the excitement. I wasn't looking forward to crossing the Sound to get back to the Jura side. However, I was delighted to see that not far past Port Askey, where the Sound starts to widen, the sea started to settle again. Presumably because the wind was no longer restricted down the Sound by the hills. It didn't take much longer to reach the shelter of Loch Tarbert, so I was delighted to have managed my original plan of mooring up here for the night. I was still not aware that it was my brother in the kayaks I saw earlier, as neither of us knew each other were in the area. I will finish this episode here, and it will be continued in part 3, and that's when I meet up with Douglas and Tony. They camped up overnight further back in the Sound, but we all watched a magnificent sunset before turning in for the night. I awoke a couple of times when it was completely dark, and was amazed to see small fluorescent lights darting about in the water beside my boat. The sea around me was bright with plankton, a wonderful sight. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.